Welcome back to another episode of 5 Sports. I'm back. Alongside me again is Matthew Choi, and we're here to cover the nitty gritty of both the NBA and the NHL playoffs as they both wind down. Let's start with the NHL playoffs, where we're in the would usually be the conference semifinals, but as we have a makeshift here, we have kind of a mix and match semifinals, let's call it. So we could start off with, the lone Canadian team that has survived, the Montreal Canadiens. They're all square against the Vegas Golden Knights at 2 games apiece. It's been, I'd say, a strange series because for a lot of the games, a team that was better in every game lost. But we do find ourselves even. We've had some good goaltending. We've had a lot of great defense from both sides. Matthew, where do you want to start with this series? What have you liked? What have you disliked from either team? What are your overall opinions on what you've seen so far?
In my opinion, what I've seen from the what I've seen from the Habs is what we've been seeing from them all playoffs long, like against the Leafs, against the Jets. They do enough. Like we know that they are not the most talented team, but we know that they do enough defensively to keep things close, and of course carry prices in that. So when you have a solid defense and one of the greatest goalies of this generation behind you, you're going to be able to limit the production of the opposing team. And I think because of that, they've been able to. They didn't allow, even though Vegas, I think, were always looking the better team. They never really carried away with it for the most part. And of course, and any minor mistakes, like for example, Fleury giving away the puck in overtime, any minor things like that can always just give Habs the edge. So I remember we talked about this and saying we thought Habs would be out in like 4 or 5. I think based on the way they've been playing the last 2 games, it's just like they can bring it to 7 because they know. Fighting from what we see from all 3 series, no matter how much people have doubted the Habs, they figure out the small flaws in each team and kind of like made the most out of not being the better team on the ice.
Yeah, it has been a very interesting series because we knew Vegas would obviously be the favorites. But I mean, we've seen, this kind of team, Montreal Canadiens, the team that shouldn't have been in the playoffs, they kind of got in a bit of luck, simply because their conference is a little weaker. And then
Yeah.
Toronto happens to, gift wrap them a series, on a plate up 3-1. Winnipeg just decided to flat out not play. And now, they're here. But the thing with Montreal Canadiens, they definitely have that inner belief inside the locker room. They know, or it was kind of them against the world at first, but now, outside of maybe some Toronto fans and Ottawa fans, teams that hate Montreal, they have a lot of support from the rest of the world. You probably have a lot of America's support, kind of, like American teams don't want to like have their teams win, so they're kind of floating over to the Montreal bandwagon, similar to how a lot of Leaf fans are maybe on the Islanders right now. Anyways, yeah, the Canadians just kind of have that like inner belief now that they can do it, and this game 5 is going to be huge. It's pivotal because whoever wins is going to basically force other team to basically bring out their best game backs against the wall in that game 6. So the game 5 is huge for both teams because all it takes after you win game 5 is a great goalie performance from either a Carey Price or a Fleury or Robin Leonard if they stick him in it again. So I mean, Vegas had the opportunity if they would have won game 3, which they should have. But then they get help from the refs and a little bit of luck in game 4. So it's been a hard series to call because the team that has played better really hasn't won, especially in the last 2 games. But I mean, from a neutral, if you're a neutral fan, if you're just getting into hockey, I mean, this has been a great series to watch because it's really been back and forth. It hasn't been boring hockey. It hasn't been too defensive. I think Montreal definitely knows they have to play more defensive, but they are trying to take opportunities to go forward when they can. And Cole Caulfield is exciting as ever. Paul Byron doesn't miss breakaways, does he? So he's been chipping in. And one guy I want to mention, Josh Anderson, he was a real menace against the Leafs. He was kind of like the offensive guy in the first few games against the Leafs when they really weren't creating much offense. And then game 5, 6, and 7, they gained more confidence. But Josh Anderson, his speed, his consistency. He's not the most flashy player, but he'll do the things that help you win games. And I think Josh Anderson this series has really started to prove his worth again after he struggled a little bit against Winnipeg. But yeah, they need someone to contribute every night. They have 18 guys, and you don't know who can step up. But Montreal, they're a unit. They're extremely unified right now. You could see in the way they play. You could see it in the locker room. You could see on the bench. There's no ego. There's no me. It's not an individual game right now. They're, I think, as united as a team as anyone as any one of the four teams left in the playoffs. And that's kind of what they need to push them over the limit against this Vegas Golden Knights. And it's going to be a tough ask because Vegas, they grind and they're not going away until they achieve their goal.
And I mean, like, I feel like that's what we see from most teams that lack like the upfront
The
like
star,
talent,
yeah.
the star power. You see them more as like they win games as a collective as a team, like you said, unified. And like you said, they have been doing a good job in Vegas. I think like like we said, most people had Vegas as the favorites, but they've been doing the way they always play hockey. They've been continuing that on throughout the series, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to like pull up the ice time from game four of the Vegas series. Or sorry, from a Montreal point of view. Like, no one dominates in minutes.
Yeah.
It's very balanced throughout. I mean, Taiwan has 17 minutes, 18 minutes. The only guy that really has the only two guys are really Jeff Petrie and Shea Weber, but that's your number one pair. So you obviously rely on them a little more than the other guys on the back end of your decor. But I mean, all the attackers are getting even minutes. Guys like Nick Suzuki, Kotkaniemi, it's all grind from them. And as much as I hate the Montreal Canadiens, I do respect the way they're playing. And unfortunately, it's not the Leafs in their position, even though it could very easily could be. But congrats to the Montreal Canadiens for being in the position that they are. They put themselves there with great performance. Coming from behind. Yeah, they've done it all, and they definitely have a lot of fans, not from Toronto, but across the border on their side. So we'll see how they can ride this momentum. And again, I think the winner of Game 5 wins this series. I think it's that pivotal.
Bridge there.
The other series, Tampa Bay versus the New York Islanders. I think it's been a series that Tampa Bay has been the better team in, but in the Game 5, they proved it with an 8-0 win. A little bit unorthodox from an Islander point of view, but overall, in the first 4 games, it was a pretty even series, but Tampa Bay got that edge yesterday in the Game 5, basically just hammering the Islanders. A lot of frustration came from the Islanders. Matt Barzal get a 5 in a game for a bad hit, but the biggest story is Tampa Bay, how well they're playing. Braden Point's on another planet right now. Steven Stamkos is, as fresh as we've seen him this year. Kucherov is doing Kucherov things, and you go down the rest of the line. I mean, the Lightning are going to be it's going to be a hard ass to beat the Lightning if they make the Stanley Cup for either the Vegas, or either for the Golden Knights, pardon me, or for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah. Like you mentioned all the players on Lightning who have been playing well. Like we mentioned,
I just mentioned the stars. I mean, I mentioned the stars, but you go down the list, and everyone on that list has been contributing. Killorn, Goodrow. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
I think, but we've seen like that's the star players that kind of take that step up, like as you would want them to in the playoffs. I think, and like I think. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Kucherov before, how he really hasn't skipped a beat since coming back from his injury. He missed the entire season. He came back right when the playoffs started, and he's been the driving force on the team as if he was there all season.
Yeah,
I will say this: I do think that the Islanders will win Game 6 because I think historically what we've seen is when teams lose badly in the playoff series, if it's not an elimination game, you often see them come back the following game. Mm-hmm. And so I do think the series will go 7 because I think Tampa Bay has been the better team this series. I do think Islanders is a team that we can expect to limit the production of the star players on Tampa for at least a game to kind of push the series to 7.
I'd say this starts everything. If the Islanders want to win the series, especially Game 6, they need Varlamov to bounce back. I'm not saying necessarily the game was his fault, but I don't think he was at his best, especially early. And Game 6 will be won early. If Tampa Bay gets off to an early start, if they go up 2 goals quick, I think it's over. I think you could write the series off at that point. But if the Islanders need to score first, you get that feeling the Islanders need the momentum back right away, especially after such a heavy loss. You think the Islanders are going to bounce back? I think the Islanders, at the beginning, the series was going 7. The Islanders would have enough to push to 7. But watching that Game 5, I'm struggling to pick the Islanders. I think Tampa Bay does win Game 6 on Wednesday, right? Wednesday night.
Yeah.
You got Tampa Bay. Yeah. It's gonna be tough. The Islanders are gonna need it just to basically close off whatever happened. Get that mentally out of their mind, and they need to get off to a quick start. They need to skate with purpose. They need to be physical early on. I think they need to put a few hits on a few of their better players. Get Matt Martin out there, get your fourth line, get your enforcers out there, let them get a little rough early, probably start a fight. Just get your bench going, get your stars going. Just you got to get the momentum back because an 8-0 loss, especially in a semifinal. I mean, you rarely see that happen, and the Islanders are going to basically they need to drink a lot. I hope they got really drunk last night. Oh, blackout. Don't remember anything that happened. Erase it from your memory. Move on. Play your hearts out on Wednesday night. But I think Tampa Bay is going to win just solely based off the fact how they played yesterday. And I think they're going to have some trouble, out of the gate. They need the first period is going to be everything in that game 6.
It really comes down to how quickly the Islanders can respond to last game. Like how quick.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't find a response soon, then you're right. Tampa will take it because then they still don't have the momentum.
And all it takes is like a fluke goal from one side to basically change the entire
Yeah,
series.
exactly.
First period is going to be everything in that game 6, and I'm looking forward to it because I think I hope the Islanders can come out with vengeance and basically a point to prove that that wasn't them, and I think they will. I'm finding it. I mean, I predict a 1-goal game no matter what in that game 6. I think it's going to come down to the third period, but the Islanders can't fall victim to going behind early. I just think that'd be basically a death sentence for them. They need Varlamov on top of his game because Vasilevsky is going to be on top of his game, Tampa Bay net. So Varlamov is going to have a big opportunity to really silence the doubters that have been creeping out throughout the season because we know this hasn't been his best overall performance throughout a regular season, but throughout the playoffs after the Pittsburgh series, after he was in and out with Sorokin, he established the lead role. Was it against was it against Florida? No, it wasn't. It was who did the Islanders beat round 2? Boston.
Yeah.
When he took over against the Bruins. So that's going to be the key. It's going to be the key. Varlamov has to stand on his head because Tampa Bay, there's no weakness offensively. They're going to push. They're going to press for 3 periods. So can the Islanders sneak one out? I hope they do for entertainment value, but I think Tampa Bay is going to close down in 6. That's I've went on a lot on this on these 2 teams, but I think Tampa Bay in 6. That's where I'm going to leave it. That's how I'm going to predict it.
That's a fair prediction.
But now we can maneuver to the NBA where a few of the series ended last week. A few of them, or one of them just began, and 2 of them, the East is going to begin their playoff series tomorrow, Wednesday night, correct?
Yeah.
Wednesday night, and it's Atlanta not versus Philadelphia, Atlanta versus Milwaukee after Atlanta knocked off Philadelphia. I think the Atlanta Philly would be a good place to start for NBA route. So let's talk about Atlanta Philly because I think most of the talk was on Philadelphia, but let's begin I think with some praise for Atlanta because they haven't really got that recognition. It was more about Philadelphia choking. So let's start. We get on that after we praise Atlanta Hawks. So Matthew, I'll start with you. How do you want to assess that series?
I mean, I think there's one point was just how well, especially the game 7, how well the team played because we didn't get the full production we would want to see from Trae Young. He was kind of limited offensively. He wasn't shooting his best, far from the best game he had this series. But everyone else kind of stepped up offensively and against the Philly defense, which is not an easy thing to do, and they basically outperformed the offense of the 76ers. Everyone kind of pitched. I forgot who was the leading scorer that game, but I know for Hawks in Game 7.
Trae Young.
Trae was
it may have been Herter. No, I think Herter put up a big performance. He had 27.
I believe. I think it was Herter I was thinking of when I was saying.
I still think Trae Young had more than 30, but no, I'm wrong. Trae Young had 21. You're right. He won 5. Yeah. I think Trae Young still put up more points with free throws, but you're right. Trae Young really struggled with the shot. The one thing I will say about Trae Young, the one thing that kind of put his name in the superstar status going forward, it was that shot late in the game. It doesn't matter how many shots you miss. It's about the ones you make. And,
Yeah.
despite being, 5 for 23 overall in the game, I'm just double checking the stats now. He was 5 for 23, but similar to Drew Holiday, who we'll talk a little bit in the Milwaukee Brooklyn series, he was like 3 for 18.
Yeah.
And when it matters most, though, fourth quarter, late game, when you need, when you're tied, you need to get a late lead. You need the momentum shift. It's all about shooting the next shot, and that's what Trae Young will always do. He'll always have the belief in himself that he'll make the next shot, and he hit about a 28-foot dagger to basically kill off the 76ers late in the fourth quarter.
But,
So it's just on your point there, yeah.
yeah, look, I mean, other than Young, we should praise like Herder,
Mhm.
Gallinari, John Collins. Everyone put chips in offensively. They knew that Trae Young was having bad shooting percentage, and so like they took the pressure off of him, allowed everyone else to score, and Trae Young, like you said, Trae Young still was able to get the basket and win. It mattered, and I think because of just how well the teams are playing, they really deserved this win against the 76ers because they played very good team basketball.
Yeah, I'll say the game six, the game that Philadelphia won, is really the story of Joel Embiid and Seth Curry. The series has really all been about Joel Embiid and Trae Young and who's going to help them on any given night, and on every given night it switched.
Yeah,
One night it was Bogdanovich for Atlanta when I think it was game two that he helped them carry with Trae Young. Seth Curry did it in game six. He with 30 plus points to help Joel Embiid, who also had 30 plus and dominated every facet of that game to push it to seven. Game five, I'm forgetting who the big support was for Trae Young in game five. It was um who was it? It was Lou Williams. That's right. Lou Williams off the bench put up 15, and he wasn't missing. In that second half, Lou Williams stepped up. So the constant in this series was Trae Young and Joel Embiid for the most part. The thing that we didn't know was who was going to help them, and it's very similar also in Milwaukee and Brooklyn. It's a very similar theme, but the difference in the series is Trae Young because he could score,
yeah,
he could pass, the support he had with Capella and John Collins, if he just lob it up top, if he wanted to spread out and go spread the floor, he had Gallinari shooting at Bogdanovich. He had Herder when he got hot eventually in Game 7. Thought Herder struggled for the most part throughout the series, but if you perform in Game 7, it doesn't really matter, does
I mean,
it?
I think a huge thing is like Young knew he was on shooting well. He was able to make his teammates better. He was able to get them the
Mhm.
ball and like, get them the open shots that allowed Herder to score 27 points in Game 7.
Yeah, no one was consistent. No one was consistent except for those two, except for the superstars. But everyone else, had their moments where they helped, where they chipped in. But defensively, I think it was a very good series. I think both teams play excellent team defense. With a Doc Rivers team, you're always going to get great defense. And Nate McMillan, his stocks are through the roof right now. I liked him in Indiana. He basically took Atlanta from 15 and 35 into a playoff spot, into a 5 seed in the playoffs, and now into an Eastern Conference semis. So I think the work he's done has been phenomenal. He's really unlocked Trae Young. He's given him more freedom in his game, and I think we've really seen Bogdanovich improve under Nate McMillan as
Yeah,
well. There are a lot of veterans on the team, like Lou Williams, like Daniel Gallinari. I think have pushed the younger guys in the group. We mentioned John Collins, who was up and down, but when John Collins was up, he was up, and you would notice, John Collins when he was at his best. It's almost like he took a half off and then came in whenever he wanted to. John Collins,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, we have to talk a little bit about Philadelphia, and I think mainly Ben Simmons can't shoot, afraid to shoot, couldn't hit a free throw if his life depended on it. If my life depended on it, I know I'd just be dead if Ben Simmons had to make a free throw to save my life. So where next for the Sixers? Do you trade Ben Simmons? Do you give up on him? Because I mean, I saw a guy afraid to shoot the ball in Game 7, and when he passed up the open dunk, the open layup, whatever you want
yeah.
to call it. I mean, I literally froze. I stared at the TV for about 30 seconds. Going back and seeing the replay over and over. I'm like, you're kidding me. You can't be that afraid to go to the free throw line, and that's what it really came down to.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue here. I think originally we talked about this like throughout his entire like career so far. We said how he's afraid to shoot the jump shot. He's afraid to shoot the 3 pointer. We've established that. That's already been kind of known already for like the last 2 years. But I think what we saw this series, he's afraid to even try to score at all. He like you mentioned, he layup is something he would normally get or to go for a dunk. That's something we know he can do. But he's afraid to do that because he doesn't want to get sent to the free throw line because We saw earlier in your earlier series, like you as you said, hack
He
Simmons.
shot 33% or 30 something percent from the free throw line throughout the series, which is
Exactly.
as
It's
bad as it can possibly get.
Yeah, it's like we are expecting him to not want to shoot the mid range, shoot the 3 pointers, but we would expect him to put some offensive work in the inside because that's what
Mm,
he's done before. And when he's not that he's
yeah,
missing that, when he's not even attempting it, he is stopping the offensive production that you need from the Sixers, you need from the championship team. That's putting more pressure on Embiid, more pressure on Tobias Harris, and it all comes down to the like, the team should surround the point guard. And it really, if you
yeah.
don't offense pressure from the point guard, it basically halts the offense.
There are a few interesting stats from Ben Simmons. In the entire series, he's 100% field goal percentage in the fourth quarter. I think with about 4 total shots, but he is 100%. I just want to bring
Yeah.
that
If I
up.
take 4 shots, I can get 100% in the fourth quarter.
um, yeah. I mean, doesn't really do him justice, but I mean, just a stat I want to throw out there. Ben Simmons wise. The one thing I also want to talk about Ben Simmons, and I think the most I think I think the best thing that was said about Ben Simmons was from Shaq, when he said, he was averaging 18 in the regular season,
Yeah,
and now he's averaging 5 in the playoffs. So even if he can't shoot, I mean, why aren't you at least playing your game? Why
yeah.
isn't he driving? Why isn't he being aggressive? Why isn't he, hitting runners? Why isn't he trying to, be aggressive and get into the paint, hit layups?
But that's because concerned because we know he can do that. We haven't even seen him attempt that in the series.
Yeah, like he has his, specialty hook shot, which he could hit, pretty consistently. It's
Yeah,
pretty much unguardable if you're 6'10. We've seen it before, just flick of the wrist. So why isn't Ben? I mean, he basically was a non-factor on offense, and I think the key is we saw this against Toronto a few years ago when we
yeah,
had Kawhi. Ben Simmons basically in the second half of games was rendered useless. In that game 7, I think against Toronto, again, I think he maybe only had 5 points. And I think last year we almost forgot about Philadelphia because they lost to Miami, and the
Benson was
story was
injured throughout
exactly.
the
And
series.
Ben Simmons, he was injured. I don't think for the start of the series was he was injured. Was it halfway through this?
I
Did
wasn't
he
injured
did he
during.
not play in the series?
I think he was injured during like the bubble, like during like the before the
I
playoffs
think
had
he played.
started.
I think he started a few of the games. But I think we almost forgot about Ben Simmons against Miami because he was injured and because Philadelphia was knocked out so quickly. And the story in the bubble was more about the Clippers, is more about, Miami and the Lakers. And, there's a lot of other things happening that didn't really involve Philly because they're out so early. Brett Brown was, used as a scapegoat. That was kind of Brett
Yeah,
Brown's last shot. So there's enough reasons for Philly to lose last year, and we almost like forgot about it and we kind of avoided the issues. But because of the situation, because Philadelphia is basically the biggest market left in the playoffs with the Clippers, everyone's going to talk about Philadelphia. There's no
yeah,
escaping it if you're Ben Simmons because it's obvious that they're the reason he's the reason they lost the series. But also, if I'm Doc Rivers, I'm questioning why are you leaving him in the game? If clearly he has no confidence shot, if you're not going to give him the ball, or they gave him the ball, but he'd always pass it off to Embiid or, give it to Tobias Harris or, dump it off to whoever was, next to him. Why is he on the floor? Why not put George Hill, who could shoot?
yeah.
If he has a wide open three, he's not going to hesitate. Why not leave in Thibault? Or why not leave in a guy like Shake Milton even? I mean, just why is he on the floor if he's not going to do anything, if he's not contributing? Where's Korkmaz? Put fucking Tyrese Maxey. I don't care. Ben Simmons, he was just such a non-factor on offense in that fourth quarter. I mean, he's making you lose. And it's as simple as that. Philadelphia is the number 1 seed, but they're let down by Ben Simmons and his inability to shoot. And that's all you could call it. It's just a complete inability to
It's
shoot
sad
the
because
basketball.
Ben Simmons,
And
he's
he's
like
your point
this.
guard. He is your point guard. We have to remember that. He is the point guard. A point guard's job is to score points and to be able to shoot the
I
ball
mean, not
at a
necessarily. A point
high.
guard is to
Well, find
facilitate.
me a point guard that can't shoot in this league. I mean, name one. I mean, Rondo. I mean, some of them have low shooting percentages.
Yeah,
Cannot shoot the three. It's literally impossible.
yeah,
He's hit what 1 3-pointer in his
No,
NBA
he needs to
career.
get going offensively, especially since he's the second guy on the team. You know, like Embiid's like there's like the face of the franchise, and like right under that is supposed to be Ben Simmons. And I
They're supposed
think,
to be a duo. They're
yeah,
supposed to be a dynamic duo. It's not supposed to be Joel Embiid carry job. It's not supposed to be Joel Embiid needs
yeah,
to go Shaq mode in the playoffs to win you a championship. You can't do it like that anymore. And even Shaq had Kobe among other guys on different teams, but not enough time to get into that. I mean, it just he was just useless in that series. Ben Simmons, he was except on defense. He did defend Trey Young, in moments there were like periods where Trey Young struggling a lot. That was because of
but
Ben Simmons. But
we're not paying Ben
that's
Simmons
his
to go into
length.
defense. You know, we're paying Ben Simmons to like help
Exactly. I
players on
mean,
both ends of the court. You know?
he has to be able to hit free throws. That's numero uno. Get in
Yeah,
the gym.
it,
He needs to shoot 500 free throws a day, and he has to make 400 of them before he gets out. I mean, that has to be like a rule every day for Ben Simmons.
if he hit
Otherwise, you basically terminate his contract.
if he hit free throws, he will have done more inside because he wouldn't have to worry about going to free throw line. You know, I honestly believe that if he was able to hit free throws, you know, he wouldn't have passed up on that
It
open
shouldn't
layup.
be a worry. It shouldn't be a worry from to shoot free throws. He's an NBA professional. He's making a lot of money. He's on a max contract, so that means he's one of the most valuable players. That's what it should mean in the NBA.
Yeah,
But I mean, his shooting, it's a huge liability, and against any good team, against a team like Atlanta, who honestly is young and honestly shouldn't realistically shouldn't be in the position that they are in. They allowed Atlanta to be where they are. And that's what Philly has to look at, because Philly overall, definitely, when you look at it on paper, is a better team, but they're done by a superstar, an emerging superstar in Trey Young, and a well coached team that plays great defense, that plays hard every play, and that, had the size to trouble Embiid at times and to hurt them on the offensive side of the floor. And that's where that series was lost.
yeah.
Let's wrap up also the Milwaukee Brooklyn series. Milwaukee won that in 7 games. KD did about all he could. James Harden clearly was injured. No Kyrie Irving. Um, yeah, Milwaukee won that series in 7. I'll let you start. What did you make of that series?
No
How
one
did it?
no one had an answer for Giannis
No.
defensively. You know, Giannis really had his way for like most of 3 quarters, and you know, Giannis usually not that. He's not a closer like in like the last few minutes of the game, and that's when I think Milton or Drew Holiday they scored the baskets that counted. But also, like for the Nets, I have to give credit to Kevin Durant because he played phenomenal this series. You know, I think with Harden not 100%, with Kyrie completely out, you know, it really everything kind of rested on Kevin Durant's shoulders, and we didn't see any much production from Joe Harris, some guy who you think as a role player that would help out KD a lot, but we didn't really see that. We got a few games where I'm forgetting his name. Who's game?
Bruce Brown? Anything?
Yeah, Bruce Brown. He's seen
Mhm.
him do some work defensively and score some baskets. But it was really all Kevin Durant this series, and he really
Yeah.
did bring the series close. But Milwaukee overall played better as a team, and I know that was like centered around Giannis. And this is the
Yeah.
kind of concern I was worried about Nets because you know I was said when you get hard when you get Kyrie, you know you lose all the support around you, and
Mhm.
on top of that, they didn't even have Harden 100%. They didn't even have Kyrie. So I really ended up with KD having no one around him, and because of that, they it just wasn't enough against Milwaukee.
I'm struggling. Is Karis LeVert? I'm thinking like hypothetically, if they have Karis LeVert in there instead of Harden, because basically who they gave up to get Harden. If they have Karis LeVert supporting KD, because I mean Harden was ineffective. He was hurt. If Harden's healthy, at 100%, I think no way does Milwaukee even push it to 7. I think it's Brooklyn 6. But I mean, it so happened that Harden injures his hamstring, Kyrie injures his hamstring, so KD has to do it all. He almost did it all, but just wasn't enough. And I mean, Brooklyn was my team to beat simply because of KD.
Yeah.
And Harden. Kyrie, we haven't seen play enough basketball, so he wasn't. I mean, he played a factor in my pick in the beginning of the season when I said if they have all three of them, if they have them healthy in the playoffs, no one's beating them.
I think
And I
I
and
always had more
yeah,
faith in the team with just two of
exactly.
them.
Yeah, you said you believed adding Harden. I think you said if they're all healthy, you probably still would have had them,
Yeah.
but just you couldn't count on their health, and you're right, or you couldn't count on them being consistent game in game out, and that's really the story of Brooklyn's season. And KD tried at the end, maybe if his shoe size was an inch or size smaller, they're playing Atlanta next series, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. The one guy I do want to talk about is Chris Middleton. Also Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez, hasn't really got much love, but Brook Lopez was phenomenal that entire series.
Yeah.
He provides rebounding. He provides 3-point shooting. He's very consistent, and he rarely has an off game. Defensively, he's always in the right place at the right time, always getting key blocks. Brook Lopez is a guy that people don't really talk about because he's been around for so long, but he does so many things right, and he's been such a valuable piece to Milwaukee being a top one or being a 3 seed. Brook Lopez he's been a big reason for Brooklyn's previous success when he spent where he spent the majority of his career. Now in Milwaukee, really being a good support for Giannis, being good support for Middleton, being that good third option to spread the floor, be somewhat of a presence inside, but that's not really his offensive game. He's more, spacing the floor on offense. I find that's when Milwaukee, and that's when he's most successful. But I think Brook Lopez isn't someone that hasn't got much love throughout the playoffs, but definitely
Yeah.
deserves it. Chris Middleton, I think he's back to his best. I think last year he wasn't, especially when they went out to Miami. I thought Middleton struggled. Jimmy Butler and Co did a good job, limiting him as well as Giannis in that quick 4-game series. The 4 or 5 last year it was a sweep, no? Miami swept Milwaukee. It was a sweep. It was as embarrassing as I remembered it. But I think Middleton, his mid-range game is so smooth.
Yeah.
I think he reminds me of DeRozan, but I honestly think Middleton's a better player than DeRozan, but just doesn't get the appreciation, I think, from the rest of the NBA, because defensively he could lock up just about anyone. But his mid-range game is so smooth. And
I think
even
DeRozan has more athleticism, but I think as
with
a
that,
shot,
yes.
it goes to Middleton.
If you want a shot maker, I think he's been inconsistent over the last 2 years with the shot, and that's really what he needs to be kind of viewed as, the max player that he is, because, when you get a max contract, that's how you always be viewed as. But, people say, is he good enough support for Giannis? Honestly, I think he is. And I think the way Giannis's game is limited in his shooting ability, Chris Middleton makes up for that.
Yeah.
And he's always there. He never shies away. He never kind of hides in the moment. And that's, I respect that a lot from a player, especially a guy that gets criticized as much as Middleton and often, he kind of gets scapegoated when the Bucks struggle, because you can't really kind of you can't put too much blame on Giannis because of everything he does on offense and on defense. But I think Middleton's role and the job he provides for the Bucks and Mike Budenholzer, I think it's gone on kind of unappreciated, and now he's starting to get that recognition now that they're back in the Eastern Conference semis. I just think Middleton's had a terrific year, and I think he struggled the last 2 years compared to early on in his career when he was really kind of dominating, really, establishing his role in this league. But I think now he's back to his best, and it's going to be a huge factor for them if they want to beat the Atlanta Hawks. Chris Middleton has to have a great series, and I think he will.
Yeah, I think you said best. We're seeing him be that second option that Milwaukee wanted him to be. And in terms of Atlanta, who would you have taking the series?
It's tough. To me, it's Can, Capella, Collins, and Capella, who and Gallinari when he comes off the bench. Can those three kind of limit Giannis? Because someone has to pick him up a half court, and it's going to be Collins and probably a duo of them, kind of stopping him inside the paint. We've seen that's really works. We saw in Toronto when they won their chip and they beat Milwaukee, it was really a combo of Kawhi picking him up on half court. And then really he had the wall of Serge Ibaka, Gasol, and Siakam, whatever the combo was on the floor. That's how they'd stop Giannis, and they'd force the other guys to hit threes, which, they didn't at the end of the day. It's going to come down to, can Atlanta play good enough defense against both Middleton and Giannis? And it's going to be tough. I see it going 7. if Atlanta wants to, and it has to be because of Trae Young. And Trae Young, honestly, is like one in my top three favorite players to watch NBA right now. He's just an electric factory. He brings energy. He brings the trash talk. I mean, his entertainment value is going to be what Steph Curry was back in his prime in a few years. Trae Young is just going to be
And you could
that
argue that
guy.
Steph Curry still is now.
If Steph Curry still is that well, I think when in 2 or 3 years when Steph Curry is really starts to decline or possibly start to decline, we really never know anymore. I think Trae Young in 3 4 years he's going to take over as that kind of like the sharpshooter of the NBA. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean he's still in a Trae Young. I mean, no, I don't think anyone in Milwaukee could really defend him at a consistent enough level. If Ben Simmons can't do it, because he is great defensively, Ben Simmons, I struggle to see really anyone on Milwaukee consistently limiting Trae Young.
I'm sure
I can
Harden
only
would be a
see it going
presence on
seven.
the perimeter.
Yeah, possibly. It's
Possibly.
going 7 games. It's going seven. Um, it's either you're betting on Trae Young or you're betting on Giannis. I'm gonna bet on Trae Young. Atlanta and seven. Boom, there you go. I'll drop dynamite on that one. Something about this Hawks team I've loved. I'm buying into Nate McMillan. I don't love Mike Budenholzer. I think he's called a lot of the wrong plays, the wrong times. I think sometimes he gets the personnel on the floor wrong. Especially in that game seven, Pat Connaughton I think played way too many minutes and he wasn't offering much. I think they could have had someone else fill in that role. It's tough. I like Atlanta 7 because I like the coaching. I love Trae Young and I'm big on Atlanta right now. I love the city right now. I love the people. I'm going Atlanta in 7. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you on this. I'm gonna go Milwaukee in 6. I credit to Atlanta. They've been playing well. I like you. I love Trae Young. I love the way he plays the game. But you said best. It really comes down if anyone can stop Giannis, and I don't think anyone can. I don't see the Hawks. Clint Capella, he'll definitely limit Giannis a little bit, but I don't think anyone can really shut him down from like scoring 30 again or scoring like in the high 20s. Like I think Giannis will always do enough in the first 3 quarters, and near the end, Middleton will close the game for them. It comes down to those
Yeah,
two, and
that's
I don't.
that's really being their kind of key to success. That's kind of being like their game plan. So yeah,
Yeah,
if they can execute that, I think again they will be a tough out for sure. But you can't stop Trae Young. I mean, he's proven that he's like Steph Curry. You can only limit him. Yeah, he's going to be a. I mean, it's going to be a defensive battle for sure. I think it's going to be defense
yeah,
first. That's going to be the priority for both teams because they don't have the best offensive teams overall. They have their guys, but they don't have 5 guys that can score the ball at will. Um, they're not like Utah. They're not like Phoenix where they play a high pace. It's a little bit of a slower game. They do try to keep the score lower on you. But it's about the superstars and can they provide the big shot on the big moment. And
yeah.
I think all these games are going to come down to the fourth quarter. I can't really see any blowouts happening because I think they're too evenly balanced, both teams. So I think it's going to be a series. Again, it's going to be a fun watch. It's going to come down to the fourth every single time, and it's going to be who can make the big shot in the big moment, and that's really what the series is going to come down to. And we're yet to we're in anticipation to see who's going to be in that moment for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And hey, ESPN's not gonna be talking about this game very much, so the season.
ESPN,
So
yeah,
if you want to
yeah,
hear coverage of this game, listen to 5 Sports.
yeah. One of our close friends made a joke that two small market teams, it's going to be on ESPN Desportes the games, which it's probably not going to be true, but it'd be funny if it was. Speaking of ESPN Desportes, another small market team, they lost the Utah Jazz a little bit surprisingly to the shorthanded Clippers without Kawhi. Games 5 and 6, no Kawhi Leonard, but no problem. Paul George really stepped into a leadership role. Terrence Mann took over in that game 6. But really, it was a team effort from Ty Lue and the Clips because no one missed.
Yeah,
No, what Patrick Beverly was hitting threes. No one was missing for the Clippers in that game 6.
I think I mentioned last week, like if Clippers want to win those 2 games, we'll really have to see Paul George like kind of take
Yeah,
step up to kind of like fill the void that
and
missing
he did.
Kawhi,
Yeah.
and he did that. We both of us I think doubted it. Both of us didn't really buy into if he can actually do it, especially this season. But that's not what he did. And like you said, the team played well around him, and it was enough to beat Utah Jazz. I think other than Don Mitchell, no one else like pitching that much offensively. I think because of that, it was. I think after game two of like the Jazz and Clippers, I think ever since then, I think we saw less protection from Clarkson. Didn't see as much from Ingles. It really did kind of dawn Mitchell, and that just happened to not be enough against the Clippers.
Yeah, Paul George 37 and 28. Reggie Jackson 27 in the game six. Terrence Mann 39. Yeah. It was a collective effort from the Clippers, and that's what they need. We saw the Kawhi takeover whenever they went down 0-2. We saw it against the Clippers. We saw in games 3 and 4 against the Utah Jazz. But it's surprising from a Utah perspective. I think they're just beat by a better team, and all of a sudden, we didn't expect the Clippers to do it because it was hard to picture them having a lot of success without Kawhi. But it was strangely, it's like they were a better team without Kawhi Leonard. I think they just stepped up. I think there's a lot of talent on the Clippers, and we knew that, but maybe their confidence was shot because they relied so much on Kawhi Leonard, but they were just able to get out of their shell. And I think
Yeah.
that's really what elevated the Clippers. Terrence Mann, who we talked about, he's had some hype around him, and the hype was, glorified in that game six. 39 dunking over Gobert. I mean, what a special performance from him to come into a game seven to start a game six to start and to take over. So incredible performance from Terrence Mann. He can have a bright future in this league. So yeah, the Clippers did. They move on. They beat the number one Utah. They beat the number one seed in the West, the Utah Jazz. So both number one seeds didn't make it out of the second round. I think it was the first time since like 85 or something. I think I saw it. Been a while since two number one seeds are on the first round. But hey, it's 2021. Anything can happen. But now they get the Phoenix Suns, who are just about as hot as anybody has ever been.
I'm taking the Phoenix Suns in
Yeah,
6.
I think Phoenix in 5.
I've,
They're just that good right now. If they get CP3 back, I think he'll come back game 3 if they get it. If they can win game 3, if they could win game 2,
he is out for 2 weeks.
he's out for.
That was
So
last week.
I mean, that's gonna put a bit of a wrinkle on things. I mean, Devin Booker took over. I mean, a debut in your Western Conference Finals triple double.
Yeah.
Again, it's as good as it gets. If you're Devin Booker, I mean, took over.
Yeah, we mentioned and before we started this podcast, we were talking about Devin Booker. We are talking about how he is kind of like that rising star in the West. I think Luka's there.
Luka's already there, yeah. Devin Booker, I think, established himself this year as the next guy as well.
Yeah, players like them, they're going to be the face of the franchise. We made the comparisons to Kobe Bryant. We've Stephen A. Smith made the comparisons to Kobe Bryant. Like if Kobe was like incarnation of MJ, Devin Booker's the incarnation of Kobe Bryant. And what Devin Booker can do is he can close games. I mean, that's a huge thing.
And he's done it. Yeah.
It was a close game, I think, against the Clippers, for game 1, and I think at the end of the game, it really rested on Devin Booker's shoulders. And even while Chris Paul, he was able to do that, and we already know what he can do when Chris Paul is on the floor as well. And I think, overall, not the Clippers. I think the Suns are a better team overall. I think we see more from what DeAndre Ayton can do, especially against Denver. We saw what he did that series. We know what Jay Crowder, we know what Bridges can do. They offer what they offer offensively as well. But like I said, it's all centered on Devin Booker. He's been playing. He proved like he could do game 1 even while Chris Paul. And when Chris Paul comes back, I think it's over.
Yeah, I agree. We both been high on Phoenix. We both have them winning the series. I just think if Devin Booker continue to be Devin Booker, if Jay Crowder continues to chip in, if the bench and if you got a good production campaign, Cam Johnson, I think they're in for a lot of success in this series. And I do think they are going to go to the I think they are going to go to the NBA Finals. That is our predictions. We will see how this week unfolds. There's a lot of basketball to be played, and a lot of things can happen in the next week, and we'll bring it back. We'll bring back all the headlines for you guys in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast, and we will be back next week for another exciting episode of 5-5 Sports from myself and Matthew Choi. We'll see you guys next week.